is brought to you by the Ultimate Production Tutorial. If you like what you see and you want to know more about film production, please follow the website link in the description below to learn more. While you're there, you can check out my show notes, where you can double-check my references, comment, and act like the film critic I know you are.
Thanks.
Also, all of the items on the website are affiliate links, so if you find anything of interest, please click on through. Finally, please subscribe, follow, like, share, comment, pray, and send good vibes to help us keep delivering great content. And now on with the show. Welcome to another edition of Movie Night Madness. I'm your host, Sisyphus Jones, and I'm joined by my co-partner and research partner, Doc Rock. What's up, Doc?
What's up, Doc?
Hi, guys.
Hello. What's up, Doc? Oh man, this movie is going to improve your libido. The opening scene is so erotic. Forget about Viagra. All you need is this
completely.
movie. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Scene.
Folks in the 60s
opening scene,
smoked all the time.
Your libido is gonna woo. It's gonna go up the orbit. It's gonna go woo. Yeah.
I'm very excited. I just
I think Sabir is here because it's another Hitler themed movie.
exactly. Exactly.
I can't wait. I can't wait for the discussion after to
The
hear
last
what he has to
discussion
say.
was so brilliant. I couldn't miss the Nazis.
Only Hitler is worth waking up at 3 a.m. for.
You gotta make Mussolini feel bad. Come on.
Yeah. Come on, man. A little love to the Italians. Come on. Well, on tonight's agenda, we have a short presentation about the production that went into the film, and then we'll watch the movie, and then we'll have a post-movie discussion about, themes that were discussed in the film, about the presentation, or whatever's on our minds. So, tonight's movie, The Producers, from 1967, was directed by Mel Brooks. It was written by Mel Brooks. It stars Zero Mostel, Gene Wilder, and Dick Shawn. That L sort of moved over. It's Mostel and then Gene Wilder. LOL, exactly. So Rotten Tomatoes gave it a very high score. IMDb, it's an excellent score for IMDb. The budget for this film was $940,000. In today's adjusted money, it's $8 million. The domestic take, unfortunately, was $328,000, or 2.8 million adjusted, which represents 240,000 tickets sold. This is kind of low on all the movies that we've watched thus far. This is definitely on the lower one. I couldn't find a movie to compare this to except for its remake in 2005. So the budget for that one was much larger. It's a $45 million movie, and it made only $19.3 million domestically, which sold approximately the same amount of tickets. And the score for that one was a 6.3 on IMDb and a 51%, 63% respectively on Rotten Tomatoes, which tells you this version is much better than the newer one with Nathan Lane and, what's the other actor? Matthew Broderick. I was going to say Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And that's the only thing that came into mind. Anyway, this movie won for Best Screenplay, despite being in competition with 2001: A Space Odyssey that same year, or Battle for Our Algiers, which is also a very, very good film. This one won for Best Screenplay. I think it was because it's a very original screenplay. In addition to an Oscar, it also won 4 Emmys, 2 Grammys, 3 Tonys, and it was also nominated for Best Supporting Actor, which was won by, Best Screenplay, sorry about that, and then Best Supporting Actor by Gene Wilder. The movie was directed by Mel Brooks, the wonderful and very funny Mel Brooks. These are some of the movies that you might know him: Young Frankenstein, Spaceballs, History of the World Part 1, Blazing Saddles, all very funny films. So he was born in 1926. He was born under the name Melvin James Kaminsky, but he changed his name to his mother's name, Brookman. He just shortened it to Brooks because there was a jazz musician who was also named Melvin Kaminsky. His first comedic performance was stand-up in the Borscht Belt in the Long Island area at 16 years old. Just coming out of high school, directly out of high school, he joined the Army and was taught to be an electrical engineer. He learned horseback riding and saber fighting, which I needed to put that in there because who learned saber fighting in 1944?
Don't mess with this guy.
Yeah, no, definitely don't mess with this guy. Saber fighting on a horse, Hitler was afraid of him for sure. So on his time in the Army, he said he liked being in the Army because he knew that he was going to get fed. He was a very poor kid when he was a kid. Immediately out of the army, he started off his show business career on Broadway. And then after the career on Broadway, he landed work as a writer for Sid Caesar for almost a generation. For almost 20 years, he worked for Sid Caesar. Sid Caesar had a numerous amount of shows during the 50s and 60s. One of them was The Show of Shows, and that's where he met Carl Reiner, and that became a very, very long, fruitful relationship. They produced an album called The 2,000-Year-Old Man. For those of you who know the album, it's a good 90 minutes of chuckles. Like there's some fun stuff. It's mostly improv, and the timing is very funny. I liked it. I listened to this stuff when I was a kid, so I'm a fan. Something that I didn't know, Mel Brooks was co-creator of Get Smart. And now knowing Get Smart and some of the jokes that are in there, you see some similarities in the humor. Like you can definitely see that Mel Brooks wrote a lot of those jokes. So the inspiration for the film, I'll let him say it in his own words. I put a bunch of slides together, and then I watched his interview. I was like, I'll just use the interview. So I think he says it well enough. Right there. Can you guys hear it?
Yep.
Somewhere in the back of my head, I knew there was a good story in the adventures of this producer that I was working for when I was 16 years old. He used to produce plays by having his investors come to his office, and they were all over 80, and he would make love to them, and they would give him money. And they usually make out a check to the current title of his play, which was always cash. And he would make love to these little old ladies, and you'd hear them screaming, "I love you, go!" It was an embarrassment to the whole building. But meanwhile, he got his money and he put on his plays. And I said, he's an unforgettable character, so one day I'm going to write a story about him.
Hundreds of little old ladies stopping off at Max Bialystok's office to grab a last thrill on the way to the cemetery.
I started as a book, too much dialogue, not enough narrative. So I said, okay, it's a play. So I began writing as a play, showed it to some friends of mine. Too many sets, too many scenes, too many sets. So I said, then what is it? They said, it's a movie. Dialogue and a lot of different places. I said, a movie? I never wrote a movie. They said, well, write it. It is a movie. So I wrote it as a movie. I brought it to Sidney Glaser. Sidney Glaser was having a tuna fish sandwich. I read Springtime for Hitler was the name of it then. And before I knew it, the tuna fish and the coffee was all over the place, and he was coughing, sputtering, and screaming. He loved it. And he said, I'm going to get this made. And he did get it made.
Phase 1 is complete. The play is ours. We are now entering phase 2, the raising of the money.
We went to many producers. We got close at Universal because they said, Hitler is too strong, too menacing. How about Springtime for Mussolini? We'll do that. So the only guy that would listen to it and eventually did it was Joseph E. Levine, who was then making movies called Hercules Chained, Hercules Unchained, Hercules Almost Chained, Hercules the Chain is Slipping, Hercules Broke the Chain. He made about 6 movies with Hercules in a chain. And Joseph E. Levine went on to make The Lion in Winter, The Graduate, and The Producers. And the guy did some incredible films in his brief span as a film company. And we had lunch, and during lunch he said, who's going to direct it? I said, I am. And he said, have you ever directed anything? I said, not really. And he said, what makes you think you could do it? I said, I'm the writer, Joe. I'm the writer. All those little scenes are in my head already. I see them. When I wrote them, I saw them. It'll save us a fortune. If you get a director, he won't know what the scenes are. He'll have to make them up. I know what they are. I'll save you thousands of dollars if you let me direct it. He took a big chance, and I'm forever grateful to Joseph E. Levine for that. And we began shooting a movie called The Producers. It could not be called Springtime for Hitler because many of the exhibitors, they would not put Hitler on the marquee. So I had to come up with a different title. I came up with this ironic title, The Producers, because these guys were anything but producers. And we had numerous adventures casting it, making it, distributing it. It was amazing. It was an amazing adventure.
You see this? This once held a pearl as big as your eye. Look at me now. Look at me now! I'm wearing a cardboard belt.
When it became in my mind a play, even before it was a movie, I envisioned this dynamo, because Zero, his personality is very close to this producer who was screwing all these old ladies. And I needed an ego, and Zero had a big ego. He had everything. Zero had energy. He had brains. He was very smart actor. He had power. He understood who his character was at all times. And he was unashamed. He was very brave. A lot of actors hide in their characters, but a lot of the real Zero came out through Max Bialystock. So I always had Zero in mind. When I first gave him the script, his wife, Kate, was my secret weapon, because I gave it to Kate first. I said, Kate, do you think this would be good? She said, this would be great. Then I gave it to Zero. He turned it down. He said, this is not for me. But it had to be Zero. I wouldn't have done the movie. There was nobody else.
So that's it. There we go. It repeats the second time. Also, some of the inspiration of the film, I'm not sure whether or not he was inspired or stole some of the concepts of the film, or maybe, great minds think alike and it happened that way. But in 1937, an RKO production of New Faces, which was something that they did every year to highlight new people coming into Hollywood, new writers, new whatever, had a production, like the storyline was very, very similar to this one. And in the same year that The Producers was released in 1967, there was another 1967 film in England called Mr. 10% that had the exact same plot, with certain things that were changed, in the sense that he made sure that the play was going to fail. So he goes in and sabotages the play himself. It's not about a bad play. It's about more like him going in to make sure that everything gets sabotaged. But it's interesting that like two movies same year, like Ants and Bugs Life, it's the same film. How was that? How did that happen? Another thing that came out of this film that I found that was kind of interesting, it is said that this movie coined the term creative accounting. So I'm now going to pay attention to the film to see whether or not they actually say those words. We'll see that. To add to Mel's story, when director Joseph Levine asked him, who are you going to get to direct? Without missing a beat, Brooks said, me! I know everything about this picture. I know where the characters have to stand. But Levine needed proof about what he was up to, because this was Mel Brooks' first directorial debut. Brooks agreed to direct a commercial for him beforehand. And in the commercial, they have Gene Wilder. So Brooks was able to show Gene Wilder's sort of comedic talent.
James, don't you simply adore Fritos corn chips?
Yes, madam. What's so good about them?
Soup. It's how Fritos taste with soup.
Begging madam's pardon, sandwiches. It's how Fritos taste with sandwiches.
James, don't contradict me. Soup.
Listen, you cuckoo clock. Sandwiches.
Tell me, Ace, what's so good about Fritos corn chips?
Well, Tailspin, in my opinion, it's how Fritos go with a hamburger.
You're wrong, Ace. It's Fritos and a Frank.
You flipped your flaps, Tailspin. It's Fritos and a hamburger.
I'll tell you what's so good about them. Nothing.
What? What?
They're even good with nothing.
Oh.
Fritos corn chips. What's so good about them?
Old commercials. So this good commercial was shot for Levin, and Levin was like, all right, he seems to know what he's doing. So he gave him the shot to make a movie that ended up losing money. But it was a very, very, very funny movie. The filming was done in 40 days. So the production time for the film was actually done in 40 days. The Springtime for Hitler number took 2 days of the film and was the most expensive scene in the film. Choreographer Alan Johnson was instructed to do a big, wonderful, flashy number, but terrible, as Brooks kept suggesting bizarre costume ideas to enhance the burlesque nature of the show. So women had pretzels on their as bras or beers, like beer mugs with foam.
Nice beer maiden.
Yeah, just a beer, exactly. A beer maiden with the right kind of costume. And even the song, like the sort of preparation, they didn't know really where everything was going to go. They sort of were building it at the same time. So in the 2 days, the song wasn't complete until like the day of shooting. Like they basically completed the song on set, which is kind of crazy. Mel Brooks spent almost 14 days getting the movie's vital opening scene sequence. So everything that you see in the opening sequence was the majority of the shooting days. He spent more time on that opening sequence than on any other part of the film, which is also nuts. The film's premiere was in Pittsburgh in November the 22nd, 1967, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it was a disaster. They had like a handful of people, literally like 12 people. Mel Brooks says there was even a bag lady that showed up. Jewish organizations around the country were outraged. You couldn't blame them because people actually had relatives in the Holocaust at that moment. Like 1967 was close enough to World War that they're like, ugh, this is a little bit in bad taste. And the film was allegedly banned in Germany, where there were laws against public display of Nazi symbolism after World War II. So this wasn't shown in Germany until they got it into a Jewish film festival. The Jewish Film Festival in Germany allowed that particular kind of film, and that's how Germany got to see the film. Joseph Levine, after all the hoopla and the really poor opening, said that he was very dubious about the offensive humor, and he was troubled that it didn't open well, so he temporarily shelved the film. And this, I think, is why some places say that it's a 1968 film and not a 1967 film. Peter Sellers, who was working on another movie, and one of the hobbies that he does while working on another movie is that on his off time, he goes and watches films, got to see a copy of this film, and he loved it so much that he immediately made a call to take out full-page ads in the trade magazines like Variety and various other things like that. And, you know, this became a phenomenon, like it was able to open nationwide because of that. So Joseph decided to open it nationwide. The movie still didn't do too well. It was a box office failure, but it didn't gain popularity until 16 millimeter prints circulated through college campuses during the 1970s. And then there was a revival, a second print, a second showing, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So it gained popularity after the fact. The confidence game, the con in this particular movie, is being the super producer. And this actually does happen. There are examples of this actually happening in real life. This is the way it works. So you've got a producer who calls the mark and sells them on a production idea. He promises the mark a dream career of being a film producer. You too can be a film producer if you invest in this film, right? The mark is like, wow, cool, really? And they sign a non-disclosure agreement, which basically keeps them from talking to friends. So basically you sign this and it says you can't talk this about to anybody. We have to keep the stuff secret because we don't know whether or not these actors, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Then the con producer, like the one that started the con, then scheduled scouting trips. So the mark gets to tour the project and see it live in action, right? Like, so they do scouting for locations. We're going to shoot here. We're going to shoot here. They go to like a production office where you got a couple of lights and cables, like just, you know, hanging around, that kind of thing. And then there's a real looking wire transfer exchanging hands to make it look like there's an actual production going on. The mark is cajoled into giving more money. And then the mark is convinced that he's going to be reimbursed. And then the production company disappears. And all that money disappears too. Most recently, in 2017, there's a guy named Roland Scahill who did exactly that for a Broadway production. He was able to bilk $205,000 from his investors. There was a list of about 5 women that he was able to just pull money from and promise them, there's going to be a great show on the story of Kathleen Battle. I don't know who that is, but that's supposedly what the show is about. He was arrested. He did 6 months for grand larceny. And he's got a Facebook, and he's still schlepping some stuff. So it's kind of interesting that this guy went to jail and really hasn't learned much of a lesson. I was going to do a final joke. I think I did write one at the end of this, but I think that this quote is probably universal. It's a life lesson, and it's very apropos for the times we live in at the moment. I was never crazy about Hitler. If you stand on a soapbox and trade rhetoric with a dictator, you'll never win. That's what they do so well. They seduce people. But if you ridicule them, bring them down with laughter, they can't win. you show how crazy they are. So that is our strongest weapon. Memes have been doing the job for us. We got to make fun of them. They don't understand humor. They don't understand how to make fun. So before we start the movie, I have an investment opportunity. It's a big money maker. I'll give everybody 35% who invests with me. It doesn't matter who you are. I'll give you 35% for sure. Let's start Movie Night Madness if everybody likes it.
Take my money!
If you like what you see and you want to know more about film production, please follow the website link in the description below to learn more. While you're there, you can check out my show notes, where you can double-check my references, comment, and act like the film critic I know you are. Also, all of the items on the website are affiliate links, so if you find anything of interest, please click on through. Finally, please subscribe, follow, like, share, comment, pray, and send good vibes to help us keep delivering great content.